Men seeking to optimize their physical health typically begin in the gym, driving their bodies into states of heavy physical exhaustion to force muscle adaptation. To fuel this effort, the standard fitness protocol dictates a rigid formula: restrict carbohydrates entirely, consume massive quantities of protein, and utilize aggressive intermittent fasting to maintain low body fat. Yet, clinical data reveals a biochemical contradiction. For lean men, these exact nutritional protocols are shown to significantly lower the body's natural production of testosterone. This graph illustrates the average male testosterone levels measured since the 1970s. The modern endocrine system is already under pressure, with baseline testosterone levels declining by approximately 1% every year in Western nations. By adopting highly restrictive aesthetic diets, men exacerbate this existing decline. These protocols force the endocrine system into a state of chronic energy scarcity, signaling the brain to prioritize metabolic survival over reproductive hormone synthesis. Maximizing testosterone naturally requires a shift away from standard aesthetic dietary dogma. Optimal hormonal health depends on aligning dietary inputs with biochemical reality. Reaching the upper biological ceiling of endogenous hormones requires programming the diet specifically to support steroidogenesis, the process by which the body manufactures steroid hormones. Testosterone is a steroid hormone, which means its entire synthesis process relies on a single parent molecule, cholesterol. This process occurs inside specialized Leydig cells. Lipid molecules from the diet pass through the cellular membrane, entering the mitochondria to initiate synthesis. This is the steroidogenic pathway. An enzyme called CYP11A1 converts dietary cholesterol into pregnenolone, which cascades through stages to become testosterone. When a patient adheres to a diet consisting of less than 20% total fat, this pathway loses its primary raw material. This substrate deficiency results in a 10 to 15% reduction in total and free testosterone. To provide sufficient material for optimal production, a diet designed for hormonal health requires between 30 and 40% of total calories from dietary fat. The quality of these lipids is a key factor. Saturated fats from grass-fed beef and egg yolks provide the stable molecular structure required for precursors, while monounsaturated fats from avocados and olive oil support cellular membrane integrity. Regardless of exercise intensity, without sufficient dietary fat, the endocrine system lacks the raw chemical materials required to manufacture androgens. Carbohydrate intake is equally critical because of how the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal, or HPG axis, interprets your diet. The HPG axis is the primary regulatory network connecting the brain's signals to the testes' output. Low-carbohydrate diets are effective for rapid weight loss, but the HPG axis interprets chronic glycogen depletion as a systemic signal of energy scarcity. These are the results from the Rosner study. We are tracking the endocrine outcomes for men on high-carbohydrate diets versus those on low-carbohydrate diets over 10 days. The data shows that men on the high-carbohydrate diet maintained significantly higher testosterone and lower cortisol levels compared to the low-carbohydrate group. This occurs because cortisol and testosterone share a reciprocal inverse relationship within the endocrine system. As one rises, the other is suppressed. High cortisol, triggered by prolonged carbohydrate restriction, directly impairs Leydig cell function and forces a measurable decline in testosterone output. Moderate, high-quality carbohydrates act as the mandatory energy security signal the brain needs to authorize optimal hormone production. Perhaps the most pervasive fitness myth is the idea that a continuous, massive intake of protein will linearly increase anabolic hormones. This scatter plot charts resting total testosterone against extreme daily protein intakes. Note the significant decline in testosterone once intake crosses 3.4 grams per kilogram. In this range, diets cause an average testosterone drop of 5.23 nanomoles per liter. The biochemical cause for this drop is hyperammonia, a buildup of ammonia in the blood, resulting from the saturation of the body's urea cycle. The urea cycle is the metabolic pathway that converts toxic ammonia into urea for excretion. Processing these extreme nitrogen loads creates significant metabolic stress, forcing the body to down-regulate testosterone production as a defensive response. A protein intake between 1.25 and 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight is sufficient to maximize muscle synthesis without inducing the stress response. Treating the body like a protein incinerator does not improve the endocrine environment. It merely induces metabolic stress that lowers androgen production. Intermittent fasting's influence on testosterone is highly divergent, depending entirely on a man's baseline body composition. This is due to aromatase, an enzyme secreted heavily by visceral fat that actively intercepts and converts testosterone molecules directly into estrogen. This flowchart tracks the two distinct biological pathways triggered by fasting, depending on the subject's starting level of body fat. On the obese pathway, fasting drives fat loss, which decreases aromatase levels. This prevents the conversion of testosterone into estrogen, effectively raising total androgen levels. On the lean pathway, prolonged fasting signals energy scarcity, suppressing luteinizing hormone, or LH. LH is the specific chemical messenger signaling the testes to produce testosterone. Compounding intense exercise with narrow feeding windows in men who are already lean creates a perfect storm for hormonal disruption. When calories are restricted into narrow windows, the body prioritizes survival over reproduction, down-regulating non-essential anabolic functions. Fasting is a powerful tool for metabolic repair in overweight men, but for lean men seeking to optimize their hormones, it is a consistent path to reduce testosterone levels. Naturally maximizing testosterone requires shifting focus toward the holistic concept of the endocrine metabolic nexus. The foundational rule remains: the brain must perceive systemic energy security and substrate abundance before it will authorize maximum hormone production. This is the endocrine matrix, a synthesized dietary algorithm designed to push endogenous testosterone to its upper biological limit. The first requirement is substrate. 30 to 40% of the diet must consist of quality fats and cholesterol to provide the structural building blocks for synthesis. The second requirement is energy signaling. Consume sufficient carbohydrates to manage cortisol and strictly cap protein below the 3.4 gram toxicity threshold. The third requirement is body composition management. Maintain low visceral adiposity to prevent aromatization, but avoid aggressive fasting once a lean body mass is achieved. By comparing the clinical data against standard fitness protocols, it becomes clear that many common habits are actually counterproductive to the hormonal goals they intend to achieve. True hormonal optimization is not achieved through starvation or chemical restriction, but by precisely engineering a state of physiological abundance.